We're obviously on lab assignment 1. You can find it in the lab materials folder. Let's get started. We're going to talk about color. A little bit. These lecture notes are a little bit confusing. Just excuse me for just 1 second. I guess this is a little bit of a review from last time. The notes in here are actually to talk about CMYK and spot colors. Let's go ahead and do that. So I actually kind of need to explain something a little bit different. This class is a little bit print-centric, right? We sort of think about things as though we're going to print them. We sort of make that assumption in this class. Now, that's not the only reason that you might create things inside of Illustrator, but that's sort of how we think, because it's going to become important later on in your classes. Originally, this program was like a very print-centric class, print-centric program. I mean, that was like 10 years ago or more, but it was that. So it sort of grew out of that. It's still very much in our blood. We very much have ink in our blood. And the one thing you need to understand is that when we print, we don't print with red, green, and blue. We print with cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, CMYK. Incidentally, does anybody know why black is K? I bet Adam, do you know?
I don't. I actually don't.
You don't know? Okay. So, just kind of an aside here. This is not terribly important, but when you print with CMY, in theory, all you really need is you need kind of opposing colors to RG and B. So the opposing color to red is cyan, actually. Cyan is not blue. Cyan is cyan. But the opposing color, they actually match up. So RGB and CMY, those are kind of the opposing colors. In theory, you should be able to print with just CMY, but you can't. And what ends up happening is the ink is not perfect. And because the ink isn't perfect, and by perfect I mean it's not the perfect, it doesn't reflect cyan perfectly, right? Because when we print, we're subtracting color from the page. We are relying on reflected light on the page. So cyan, if I print cyan, I want this page now to reflect cyan. But there's an issue that our inks aren't perfect. It's not going to reflect the full spectrum of cyan. And what ends up happening when we combine these three inks together is we get really muddy looking images. I'll show you in Photoshop what that looks like later on. We get really muddy looking images. They look terrible. What ended up happening is some printer somewhere in the early days of printing said Eureka and decided to print black as a fourth color. Black does not stand for the K of black. It stands because Eureka, it was the key to the solution. Does that make sense? Key to the solution? Key, it was, this is not being recorded. Oh, it is being recorded. Oh, great. It was the key color. Eureka, it was the key. That's why we call it K. Okay. I know. It's the best story I have all day. So yeah, we're usually reflecting colors, right? And we print cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. Now, because cyan, magenta, yellow, and our black are not perfect inks, they're not, it's really hard to create a good cyan, honestly. Getting that perfect cyan is really expensive. We have another option. We have what we call spot colors. And spot colors, you can think of like a company producing a specific ink that's a specific color that can be printed on a page. So for example, Cougar Red has a Pantone color. If I go to, I'm just going to go to uh.edu, and if I look up, I don't know what to look up. What is Cougar Red? I think there's a page. Maybe I need to add branding or something. God, the search is bad in here. I think it's Pantone 186. Does anybody know the acronym for Pantone Matching System? PMS, yes. Oh, printers love their bad jokes. So anyway, Cougar Red is Pantone 186. I cannot replicate Cougar Red with cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. I can't do it. I can't get it just right. Coca-Cola has a color. Every brand has a PMS color. U of H notwithstanding. I think, actually, you know what? I know how to get there. It's images.google. I kind of routed. No, wait. It's images.uh.edu. And then it's going to ask me to log in, just your CougarNet. And I think anybody can get to the branding page. And if I go to graphic standards and then select style guidelines and then color, aha. Here are all the colors that are used and their associated values. Now you'll notice that it does in fact give you a CMYK value for red, which will get you really close, but not perfect. It's Pantone 186. Yeah, Pantone 186 is the color we use. All of these, and you'll see this, like walk outside, you'll see these brand colors everywhere, right? You'll also notice that, like, I tried to produce Cougar Red there. It's not exactly the same. Yeah, don't look on the monitor, on the projector, but. So the way that we do that inside of Illustrator here, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select multiple objects because I want to color them all similarly. And I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select these three circles. And then I'm going to double click. You kind of remembered this from last week. We're going to kind of be dealing with this panel right here. Let's do a quick refresher course of this panel. Here is our fill. So this is going to fill that object, assuming it's a closed path. The stroke, right now it's set to a stroke of none. And you can, if you accidentally set a stroke and you don't want one, you can always click this box right here. There are three boxes right here. You can always set it to the default colors of a white fill with a black stroke. You can swap the stroke and fill with this option right here. I think there's a hotkey of X. And you can set either a fill, a gradient, or none. And we're going to talk about gradients here in just a second, actually, once we get to the monkey. So I'll double click the fill because I want to set a fill here. And go ahead and start coloring your frog in. I'm probably going to end up making a psychedelic frog. Hold down the Shift key and click and drag. Click those all. If you try to make a selection by clicking and dragging, you'll notice it'll end up selecting a whole bunch of things. So in this case, you're going to have to hold down the Shift key and select objects. And then let's say I wanted the exact same colors on the left side as I did the right. So I'll shift click, and you guys can pick whatever colors you want. Those three, I'm going to grab my eyedropper tool, which is right down here. It's under the gradient tool. Hotkey of I for eyedropper. And the eyedropper tool will sample the stroke and fill. So like every object sort of has these attributes, stroke and fill. It will sample the stroke and fill and apply it to whatever I have selected. It will sample those colors for me. I think you can sample like anywhere inside of here. And feel free to kind of color in your frog. Okay, I'll cover that again. Let me do it with these three right here. So let's say I colored in these three. And I'll give it, I don't know what colors I'm using. I filled in those three, but let's say, oops, I wanted to fill in these three with the same color. I'll shift click them to select them all. I'll grab my eyedropper tool, which is located right here. It looks like an eyedropper. And then I'll click and sample somewhere inside of that other thing, which will copy that stroke and fill over to the new object. And we talked about those spot colors. The way that you do those spot colors inside of inside of, I'm just reminding myself right quick how to do it. Yeah, I remember now. Inside of that is you open your swatches panel. Swatches, the swatches panel is a nice, convenient way for you to save colors. And by default, it comes up with a bunch of colors and actually patterns and some gradients. You can save all kinds of things in your swatches panel. If you don't see the swatches panel, just go to Window Swatches. Window Swatches should be alphabetical. And just like all of our other panels, we have lots of little different options in here. Feel free to explore these. You can create little folders to help yourself stay organized. There are color libraries that you can mount or load. I don't know how to. Especially one of the more useful ones, if you're looking for skin tones, there's a nice skin tones one in here. One thing I want everybody to go ahead and do, and don't start coloring the monkey yet, please, because we're going to do gradients. Go ahead and create a new swatch, which will come up with this library right here. And if you click the new swatch icon at the bottom of that panel, it's kind of the second option at the very bottom. It sort of looks like a little piece of paper. That's always the new icon. It's really teeny tiny, right? It sort of looks like a piece of paper with thing. That's always the new icon. We'll create a new swatch. Wait, what did I do? Where did it go? So click the new swatch. If you don't see the swatches panel, again, just go to Window Swatches. And we can actually kind of create a spot color. And let's see, we need... Oh, I forgot how to do this. Oh no. A process color or a spot color. I thought there was like a menu devoted to spot colors. Let me see. Is it under the libraries? I haven't done this in Illustrator in a little while. Just be patient. Swatches, color books. Oh, it's under the color books. Oh, okay. That's what I forgot to do. I'm sorry. So at the bottom left, actually, you can create your own swatch, but let's do the libraries are going to be much more simple. If you go to color books, these are different color libraries. Notice here there are a bunch that say Pantone. Those are the Pantone makes these inks so that you can reproduce this color over and over and over again forever. There are other companies that do it. The Toyo, True Match, HKS. Pantone is the big one. And notice that some of these say coated and uncoated. That is to say coated and uncoated paper. Coated paper is glossy paper, right? So that photo over there, the one on top that is of the San Francisco Bridge, the Golden Gate Bridge, that's coated paper, right? It's actually like double coated too. It's like extra coating. And then uncoated paper is what you think it is. It's just like that Facebook thing. That is uncoated paper. And the colors will change how they look depending on if you're printing on different colored paper. So it's kind of helpful to know. Incidentally, when we print, I don't know, just to be clear, when we print cyan, magenta, yellow, and black, and all printers do this, all printers print CMYK that print color. We can combine those colors on the page using, well, something that you're going to learn about later. We can combine those on the page and produce just about any color that we might need for photographs. You'll notice, but now think about it. If I have a spot color, or I mean a Pantone color, so Pantone 186, let's say we grab that Pantone 186, that Cougar Red, that's not going to be particularly useful for a photograph, is it? But if I'm printing the U of H logo, maybe I do need that color. And you can print all different kinds of combinations, but in order to get like photographic prints, we need cyan, magenta, we need the CMYK, we need that full spectrum. For example, we have a two-color press. It can only print 2 inks at a time. If we need cyan, magenta, yellow, black, we have to put that paper. We have to take it out of the end, and then send it, reset the press, and put 2 new ink colors in, and then send it in again. Usually, we print black and cougar red on it. It's almost like black and cougar red all the time. Anyway, so go ahead and fill those in. Those are spot colors. They're kind of useful to know. Kind of tuck that away for later. I might print, I don't know, this looks like a darker red. Go ahead and make your frog look psychedelic or whatever you want it to look like. It's fine. Let's look at gradients. We don't live, like objects don't exist in a two-dimensional world so much. I guess we see in 2 dimensions, but things have gradients, right? We see depth through gradients. So let's cover how to do a gradient right quick. Everyone go to Window, Gradients. Window, Gradients. And we have our gradient. So objects can have kind of like different modes, and we can see those 3 different modes down here. If I select a stroke of, so if I select the stroke, notice it kind of comes forward, and I select none. I know it's a little bit hard to see there at the bottom corner. This line will no longer have a stroke around it, or there will no longer be a black or whatever color I told it to line around it. But if I want to set a gradient, notice that there's a middle option right here. Go ahead and select that option, and what it will do is it will create the default gradient. And with your gradient panel open, incidentally, if you don't see the gradient panel, Window, Gradient, and we see all of the different options for this object. We can select radial gradients, and radial gradients are going to gradiate from the center outwards, like a radius. It kind of forms like a circle. It might be a little bit easier to see it. Let me show you guys on a different shape. Let me just kind of create a regular shape here. See, this is a radial gradient. So we can also have linear gradients where it kind of goes from left to right, or a radial gradient where it sort of goes out from the center. Easy way to form a nice sphere, right? It looks spherical, but in fact, it's just a 2-dimensional object, right? Let's stick to, for this guy, I guess linear gradients. And let's take a little deeper look at this panel right quick. Your strokes can actually be gradients, and there's some different options for those right here. So if you apply a stroke as a gradient, it's kind of a new option inside of Illustrator, actually. You can set the angle that the gradient happens. So if you want it to go from bottom to top, then you set it to 90 degrees, right? And I think I did 90 degrees. I don't know, this is a weird object. Yeah, it's darker at the top, and then it's getting lighter. If you want to change the colors, we look, now right now it's defaulted to white to black. You have this panel right here, and everything, again, tiny little menu options in here. All of these things do different things. So this little square right here, if we double click it, it will bring up the color selection window. The color selection window has a bad habit. I really hate how it does this. It has a bad habit of defaulting to grayscale. We can change it by simply clicking this little menu here at the top right and selecting RGB, HSB. RGB is pretty good. Hue, saturation, brightness, that's another different way of working. I'll go ahead and select RGB, and you'll see that I can just kind of color pick as I want from this window, like so. You could also set individual values as you see fit, kind of play around. If you double click, so just kind of stepping back a little bit, if you double click one of these little boxes under the gradient, it will bring up this. It will default to grayscale for some reason, and you can select there. Notice you can also select from your swatches. So if you saved a color and want to review that, or if you just want to use some of the swatches that Illustrator gave to you by default, I'll go ahead and select RGB and pick a, I don't know, what color are monkeys? Kind of an orange color, not too dark. Kind of feel like desaturating. So if I want to desaturate it, I can go to Hue, Saturation, Brightness, and take this saturation slider and drag it down and kind of create like a less pronounced color, I guess. And of course, we want to set the other side of this color as well. So I'll double click that box under the other side. It defaults to grayscale. I'll select RGB and select another color for it to gradiate to. Let's make a happy monkey. There are a lot of different things that you can do to kind of change how your gradient looks. You can add more colors on here. You could add as many different colors as you want. Notice that if I click under here, actually let me delete that. Oops. I gotta delete this. No, delete the stupid swatch. Just drag it off. I'm just gonna undo. Command Z a few times. I forgot how to delete those. You can add colors. So if I just click underneath here anywhere, it'll add a new little thing here, and it will automatically set it to the color that it already was. So it kind of still keeps that existing gradient. But if I want to change this, I don't know, if I want to make it a little bit darker, I'll go to HSB, and then maybe make this a little bit darker. I can have kind of a dark spot across that gradient. So what it's doing is it's starting at this peach color. It's going to gradiate to the color in the middle, and then the color in the middle is now going to gradiate towards the one on the right. Also notice that there are these two little stars. Oh, not stars, they're diamonds. And you can kind of change how quickly it gradiates from one color to the next. You can also set the opacity and location manually too if you want. And there's a trash can icon. If you accidentally create, a whole bunch of these on here, you don't want them, you can select them and then click the little trash can to delete them. If for some reason you find that the gradient is kind of going the wrong direction, you can reverse it. You could also, set the angle to 180 degrees. That will reverse it as well. So there is just a simple reverse button, which will just flip that gradient like so. Go ahead and finish painting the monkey. With different gradients. Doesn't have to look spectacular. I'm not expecting like great works of art. Don't worry, don't freak out. One thing to be careful about is don't get too caught up in the teeny tiny details. Maybe for your big lab assignment, remember there's 4 of those. There's kind of 2 for Illustrator, 2 for Photoshop. The second one of each of those, so assignment 2 and assignment 4, those are kind of the big ones. Those pick on the details. Here, not so much. When I grade these, and you will turn them in, when I grade these, and they're due next week at the beginning of class, I'm going to grade them pretty quickly. I'm just interested, did you do it? Do you understand it? It's almost a completion grade, really. As long as you do the work, and I'll give you partial credit too, of course. You did it and understand it. I'm going to check off your grade. It's not, it can be, sometimes these lab assignments can be a little tedious, a little time consuming, but they're not, I don't think that they're difficult. I don't think I'd ever call them difficult. Time consuming, yes, they can get time consuming. I'm going to go ahead and take a quick break so I can actually resume. All right, we're coming. All right, we're back. And we're going to need another artboard because if we look at the instructions, incidentally, it was a PDF. It's on Blackboard. It's also in the lab assignments folder. So we have the PDF here. We're going to take this PDF and we're going to explore each of the different Pathfinder options inside of thing. We're also going to explore creating some of these different objects as well. So I'm going to have those off to the side. I'm going to reference them every once in a while. Wow, my stuff's getting really complicated, so I'm going to reset my essentials just to kind of clean things up. And we're going to need a new artboard, so I'm going to go to my artboard panel and select new. Voila, that spits out another artboard of the same size. And I don't really have enough screen real estate to kind of have both on the screen at the same time, but let me see here. Let me collapse this down. We're going to recreate each of these objects in turn and then apply the Pathfinder options in order. So we'll need our Pathfinder panel, so window Pathfinder. Window Pathfinder. Why are you throwing it over there? And let's take a look at each of how to create all of these options. Now, one of the things that the Pathfinder doesn't like very much is strokes. But one of the things that we can do, let me refer, I'm going to kind of bounce back between this object back and forth. Okay, so let's kind of up there. So let's start with this first object. And incidentally, these are just in order of the Pathfinder options, except there's one that we skip. So this first one is in the Pathfinder options is simply that top left option, and we're going to go in order from left to right. There's one of these that we were going to skip. I think it's this one. So there's the shape modes, which kind of act like addition and subtraction, basically. So this first one, like I said, it doesn't necessarily like strokes, but what we can do is we can actually use strokes inside of Illustrator to help us out. Let me show you exactly what I mean. So I'll start by drawing that first line. We can see here that I kind of want to start by drawing that first line. Actually, I take it back. I need a circle first. The order doesn't really matter, but... And I'll hold down the Shift key, and I'm going to hold down the spacebar key to kind of get it just right. You know, and it's going to default to whatever I was playing with before. I'm going to go down here to the bottom right and switch the fill mode to color. And then I'll double click and select some color. I don't know. That looks nice. Whichever. Okay, so from here, I need a line. I'll draw a line. And lines, obviously, if I try to set a fill to this line, it's not going to do anything. But I can set a stroke. And I'll just go ahead and select some sort of yellow. Now, our line is not looking quite like the lines that we have here. It's got two issues. One, it's not thick enough, and then two, it's probably hard for you guys to see. It's very square on the end. So what we can do is go to Window. Where is it? Window Stroke. And, oh, it's right here. And I'm going to click and drag it out. And remember, if you double click the name, it will kind of show and hide more options. And we see yet another important panel. If you accidentally click off of the object, make sure it's selected. So I have it selected. And we can increase the weight, or really the thickness of the line. So I don't know, I'm just going to kind of experiment here. 12 points seems to be looking pretty good. Maybe 14. I still have a very square ends. I can change the caps to the line to a rounded cap. And there are lots of other different options. I can even create a dashed line. All different kinds of options for you guys to kind of play around with. The corners aren't going to matter because there aren't any corners, but if I essentially had a line and then another line forming kind of the start of a closed path, then those corners might matter. All different kinds of options for you guys to play in here with. We're going to need a bunch more lines, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to hold down the Alt key because, and if you notice if I mouse over that line, holding down the Alt key will create this double cursor. I don't know if you can see that very well. See how it's kind of that double cursor there? That means I'm going to duplicate this object. And if I combine that with rotating the object, oh, it didn't do it. Oh, you know what? Oh, scratch that. Okay, so I thought we could rotate it. Let's rotate it with a different way. Why not? Let's go to Object, Object Transform Rotate. With the object selected, go to Object Transform Rotate, which will bring up this dialog box. For some reason, whenever you perform operations, it likes to uncheck this preview, so just always check that. And I'm going to set a value, let's say 30 degrees, why not? And if I click OK, it will simply rotate this object. I don't want to rotate this object, I actually want to copy it. So I can click Copy, and then I can do it again. Object Transform. I think, let's see, if I go to Transform Each, will it let me do what I'm thinking it will let me do? 30. Oh, I know what I can do. How do I do this? There was a way. Oh, okay. Yeah, okay, so now I remember how to do this. Okay. So we just performed this rotate option. Now we could go to rotate and then click copy again and then do it that way, but there's actually a more convenient way where you go to transform and then transform again. Notice that there's a hotkey here of Command D. It likes to try and tell you what these hotkeys are. Incidentally, that squiggle line is the command button. The up arrow, that's the shift key. And see this weird, I don't know, it kind of looks like a J or an H. I don't even know what it is. That's the Alt Option key. So whenever you see these modifier keys, so that's the Command key, that's the Shift key, and that's the Alt key. So if I wanted to select Transform Each using the hotkeys on the keyboard, I would do what we like to call mashing my fist on the keyboard, which is like all the modifier keys, Shift, Alt, and D. We don't actually want Transform Each. I just wanted to show you that. We want actually Transform again. Sorry to be confusing, but where was I? Transform again. You'll notice that if I click Transform again, it will take that and it will do it automatically. So I can just hit Command D, Command D, Command D until I have all of those done. So one of the things, if you guys missed it, I'm going to undo that. Let's cover that again right quick. If you go to Object, Transform, Rotate, it'll bring up this dialog box. I want to check the preview checkbox. I'm going to set an angle value of 30. And here, if I click OK, it will just rotate the object. If I click Copy, it will create a copy of that object and then rotate it. From here, I'm going to use the hotkey of Command D to redo that transform again and again and again and again. So it's like if I rotated it once, it's just going to do that same thing again and again and again. I'm going to click and drag and make a selection so that I select all of the objects, because one of the things we need to do is center what we've created here. And up here at the top, once I select things, I can horizontally align center. Oops, you know what? I've got it set to the artboard. I want it to set to the selection. You can kind of set it to where, and don't worry if you get a little bit lost, if you get a little bit behind. I'm going to walk around here in a minute and help you guys out. It's kind of hard for me to be in two places at once, so I know some of you guys are getting a little behind, but that's okay. So I'm going to center these based on selection, and I'll center this. There we go. So now my doodad, I don't know what this is centered. Now one of the things that I said Pathfinder doesn't like very much. In order to center it, by the way, just to cover that again, drag a selection over the whole thing. And up here at the top, you'll have the different options. And I'm gonna click the Align Horizontal Center, which looks like the center one, and then the Align Vertical Center. So that way, everything's kind of on top of each other. Since it's symmetrical, I can kind of do that, like that. Now, one of the things that we said that Illustrator doesn't like is, Pathfinder doesn't like, rather, is strokes. If I try to use some of the Pathfinder options with this, with a stroke, wait, that's not what I wanted. What are you doing? That's not, no, bad. Okay, so what we need to do is I'm going to select, you know what I need to do is what I want to do is I want to select all the lines, but not the circle. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to click and drag a selection like before. I'm going to hold down the shift key and then I'm going to click the circle, which will deselect it. Did everybody catch that? There's lots of different ways of selecting things. You don't always have to, I mean, I could sit here, shift click, shift click, shift click, shift click, but a little bit slightly faster way is to just drag a selection over all of them and then deselect by shift clicking that circle. So now I just have those guys selected. Because the circle has a fill, right? It's a closed object. What we can do is we can actually create closed objects out of anything by going to Object, Expand. Object Expand. Object Expand will always kind of make your objects into regular objects. So later on, when we start to deal with some weird objects like live paint objects and compound objects, if for some reason you want to use Pathfinder with those objects, you can always expand it, and that's kind of like, oh, it's in this mode, I'm just going to make it a normal object. In this case, watch what it does, and pay attention to the lines going down the very center of the object. Did you guys catch that? Did you see what it did right there? It created outlines of the strokes. So I'll undo that, and then I'll redo. Do you guys see what it did? That's the expand. So instead of being a stroke, can you guys see that it's now a fill? Aha! Now I can do what I want. And what we want is, remember, these are going to be in the order pretty much left to right. I want to click that center one. Actually, you know what? I missed one. I want to select all of them. Sorry. Make sure they're all selected, and then select that first one. And now we have kind of a sun. Notice that Pathfinder made a choice for us. It said, Mike, you must not want that purple because it's behind all of those other objects. So it kept the yellow and removed the purple. So what I would like to do, I was kind of hoping to get through a few more of these, and if I have time, I will. But I'm seeing a lot of people getting a little bit behind, so I'd like to help people individually, and I'm going to do that now. But what we need to do, so if you're seeing something different, what you need to do is maybe undo, so Command Z, and then click and drag, and then select the first option in the Pathfinder palette. And if you have different colors, like I don't really care. I just want to see that you guys did this roughly the same steps. I'm not going to nitpick over the details.
But like on the lab assignment, it's purple and yellow. Are we supposed to leave it just all one color? Or are we supposed to
Oh, this is not what it's supposed to look like in the end.
Oh, okay.
I will. Oh, I guess we have to go over these. Okay, we're just running a little short on time, so I'm trying to find a faster way of doing this. Is anybody getting particularly behind? Need me to help them? Maybe just helping our neighbors is good enough for now. So make sure you expand it. I'm going to give you guys a few minutes. I'm going to try to go slow as I can, but we've only got 20 minutes left. I'd like to show you guys what this should look like in the end. And then hopefully I can maybe go to the very last part, the last two parts on this assignment. I'm going to go ahead and create each of these and then apply them in turn. I'm going to drag this off to the side here so I can see it. I'm going to have to go a little bit faster. I wish there were a better option, but so This object, I need kind of a bluish fill. And then I'm going to double click the stroke. Remember the stroke is this one in the back, and it needs a purple stroke. And the stroke isn't very thick, so I'm going to set the stroke weight in my stroke palette, maybe a little thicker. And then we need a star, so there is a star tool. Again, I can always hold down the space bar and drag that around. And I need to fill that with yellow. So what I'm going to do is turn off the stroke by clicking that icon. And fill it with a value. I'm going to stick around after class and help you guys out with this. So if you guys are getting behind, please don't stress out. I will help you individually as best as I can. I don't mind staying a little bit late and helping you guys out. But I definitely want to complete these and show you what they will look like when I'm done. I do have a stroke, so I do need to expand, and you can expand things. You'll notice what it will do with this object. Oh, it's object expand. And just leave these checked, it's fine. And you'll notice what it does with this one. Let me zoom in. Zooming in. See what it, oops. So it kind of almost created two objects. So now there's like an inner circle and an outer circle. And I think it groups them. So you can always right click and ungroup if you want. And so now there's kind of like this shape and this shape. So it kind of created, that's what expand did with that one. Oops, I'm zoomed in way too much. Yeah.
For this one, we're supposed to create two separate circles.
Well, okay, let me cover that again right quick. I could do this again pretty quick. All I did was create a rather thick stroke with a circle. So I set a fill. Right now I don't have a stroke, so I need to select my stroke here at the bottom. I'm going to double click that and give it a color. By default, it will, whatever color you want. By default, it will give it a really, really thin stroke. So with my stroke palette, I can set a higher value. Yeah. The only thing is that Pathfinder is not going to like that stroke, but we can always expand strokes. So, I mean, there's lots of different ways of doing this. I mean, I could have created a circle and then drew another circle on top of it, made it slightly smaller, right? I don't want a stroke on the star. Let's give it a yellow color. And I just grabbed the star tool. Remember that it likes to hide things in here, so whenever you see this little hash mark underneath your tools, that means that you need to click and hold, and there's going to be tools hidden underneath it. There you will find the star tool. I need to expand the circle, so object expand. And then when I select this small group and I do divide, voila. Did I do divide? Yeah, I should have done divide. We can kind of experiment and see what that blend mode does. So kind of cut a hole in the middle of it.
So what's the expand really for?
Hmm?
The expand, what is it for?
It takes our stroke. So notice that in this instance, let me zoom in a bit. Notice that in this instance, let me undo. So here I have a circle with a stroke. But if I apply expand, and I'm just going to kind of go through that, it doesn't really look like it changed anything. But what it did is it created two grouped objects, and I can tell that they're grouped because layer panel. And inside of this group, I'm just going to ungroup them. I'm just going to right click and select ungroup. You can see here that I have here's the path, but kind of as a closed object. And here's the path before with a fill. So,
It makes paths higher.
yeah. What did I just do? Oh, I didn't have everything selected. So I'll select all that stuff. I need to expand this guy again. Object expand. No, don't move. But anyway, did you guys see how that one looked? So it shouldn't have this blue circle. Whatever, it should look something like that. This next one is actually a little bit tricky. By tricky, I mean annoying. I can create these rectangles by simply adding a nice stroke, and again, it's going to make me kind of do this. Nice thick stroke. And I'll create a circle in sort of the same manner, or an ellipse rather. Yeah, you don't have to ungroup it, but it kind of helps you visualize what's going on. And these are in order, so the very first one is the top left one in the shape modes. We're just going down the list from left to right. This time we're going to use, come on, where's this guy? This guy will, let's see, let's choose the different colors, so we're doing that. I need to, again, it doesn't like strokes, so I'm going to expand these. And then I'm going to select all of them, and I'm going to do that one. Oh, this one's quirky. Okay, so actually what needs to happen with this one is it doesn't want to do it with multiple objects. So what we're going to have to do is make multiple copies of this blue, it's called a rounded rectangle, incidentally. I simply located it here. It's the second option over there. It's a rounded rectangle. I'm going to create a copy. It's pretty easy to do by just pressing Command C, and that'll make a copy of it. Now, if I just simply hit Paste or Command V, even if you go into the Edit menu, you'll notice that there's a couple of different options that you guys should be aware of. If I paste it, it will just paste it kind of in a random location or in the center of my screen. That's not what I want. What I really want is, I could do paste in place, which would paste it exactly in its same location. But now I've pasted it in the wrong order. To save just that tiny bit of time, I can do Edit, Paste in Back. So now I have two objects. There are two rectangles here, rounded rectangles, right on top of each other that look exactly the same. I'm not going to really see any different. Then I don't want to select all because there's too many objects here. I'm going to hold down the Shift key and select these two objects and use the Pathfinder option on that one. And then I'm going to Shift click the other one and then use that Pathfinder option on that one. What are we on, the third one? Unite. That's weird. It created that weird blue line there. So you should. Did you expand these objects?
Not after we do the copy and paste.
It doesn't matter the order. You could copy and paste it and then expand these, but you do need to expand them before you do the Pathfinder, because Pathfinder will do weird things with strokes, or will say I can't do this. You can't, so when I do it, you can't have 3 objects selected or more than 2. So what you need to do is use the Shift click, and I'll click this green rectangle, and then Shift click the blue one, and then do it. And because we had 2 here, you'll notice kind of what happens is that it deleted those blue rectangles. But I have to do them one at a time. Actually, this one's weird. I don't know why this one. If you guys get this one roughly close, like I don't know. It's fine. All right, let's create the next one right fast. I need a yellow ellipse, or whatever color you want. And then I need 2 hexagons, 2 hexagons. So what I need is the polygon tool, which again is hidden underneath like before. The polygon tool. And then I'm going to click and drag, and you may notice that I may not have the correct number of sides. What I can do is push the up and down arrows until I get, actually it was a hexagon. Oh, I had the right hexagon. All right, whatever. Let's see, is that right? No, I need a... Let's see, 1, 2, no, that's what I want. This is the shape that I want. Yeah. I'm going to swap the stroke and fill by clicking that little double arrow icon. And just like before, kind of really repeating our steps over and over again. Setting a different stroke, setting the stroke a little bit thicker. Now I need a duplicate of this object. I could Command C, Command V. The easiest way to do it is hold down the Alt key, click and drag the object to make a duplicate version of it. So with the object selected, holding down the Alt key, click and drag the object. From here, same steps as before. I need to shift click these 2 objects like that. And I'm going to expand. Object expand. We're going to be doing these steps kind of over and over and over again. I will select all of the ones here and select the final Pathfinder option. We see that if I ungroup these, Pathfinder will always create groups of objects. If I ungroup these, it's actually created like individual paths out of each of these kind of objects that we had before. So really, it's kind of like the first 2 operations, but also keeping the objects. All right, moving on. Getting a little bit short on time. And we'll draw this ellipse. I will stay after class and help you guys if you guys want a little bit more time. And for this one, I'm just going to grab, I don't know, let's grab the pencil tool. Pencil tool is going to create, oops. Let's see. I need to create, let's see, stroke, that. And then, oh, it doesn't have a weight, so I need to set a weight. Pencil tool is going to create kind of lines, just kind of rough zigzag it. And let's set that to black. I will click and drag. As always, we need to expand this line. Actually, I can't remember if this one actually, because of the way it works, we might need not to expand. Let me see. Now we do need to expand that line. Object expand. And clicking and dragging. Careful not to grab anything off to the right here. If you do, you can just shift click it and it'll deselect it. And if I ungroup, it may kind of look like it didn't do anything, but what it actually did was, feel like a magician. It has broken this thing apart. Of course, you guys, when you see this, obviously, it's not going to let you do that initially because they're all grouped together. Again, pay attention to your layers panel. It will tell you what's going on. I have this object selected. Oh, that's weird. Let me turn this panel options back up to 60. I can see that I have it selected because it's the one with the highlighted meatball. And I can see that it's a group, and I can see that it has lots of individual paths in here as part of that group. I can simply right-click it and ungroup it if I want to. I could have double-clicked it also as well.
After we grouped it, what did we use?
Well, Pathfinder creates groups is what I'm trying to say. So back a little bit earlier, what we did was we selected the pencil line that we created, and we expanded that. Then I'm going to shift and drag and select all of them and select that first Pathfinder option, trim. which kind of looks like it didn't do anything, but when we take a good look at it, we notice that it has created lots of little pieces. Creating the next one.
So before you do the expand, are you selecting both objects and then?
No, you only need to expand objects that have a stroke. Objects that have a fill don't need to be expanded, and expand, I don't think they'll do anything. Because, actually I'm kind of curious, what would happen if I took a closed object and expanded it? I don't think it's going to do anything. It will, object expands, where'd it go? Yeah, I don't even think it's going to do anything. If I just do object expand, we're just expanding it because, again, Pathfinder, it doesn't tend to like strokes, but we can make the stroke a fill. See how this path is? It used to just be, see how the red line goes around it instead of it just being a single line? That was because we expanded it. Now it's kind of behaving like this shape, or at least what was all connected, right? And then luckily these objects are getting a lot easier to draw. So what we have here is we actually have multiple circles. Green for the stroke, maybe make it a little thicker. So anything with the stroke, I'm going to have to expand. I'm just going to do the fast way of, I'm going to see, Command C and then Command Shift V. And then, oh, I turned off my bounding box. And make this one a little bit bigger. One of the things that you'll learn about Illustrator is that the more you learn about Illustrator, I'm going to show you a tool tomorrow. Not tomorrow. Yeah, tomorrow. No, next week that you can pretty much create everything with. But these kind of options, they help you get faster. It's a lot easier to kind of use these pathfinding options. And then what do I need? I need 4 small circles that have teeny strokes. Teeny tiny strokes. Let's make these look a little different. Darker, different color. I'm sorry I'm going a little fast here. I guess I'm not sure what, I don't know how Professor Z goes through this amount of material so quickly. And again, I'm just holding down the Alt key, and I'm also holding down the Shift key at the same time. And you'll notice it kind of makes it stick to 90-degree angles, so I can get it roughly correct. Again, I've got a lot of strokes here, so I need to expand all these strokes. So I'll click and drag a selection. Very, very similar steps, just over and over again, expanding once again. From here, once we have the expanded options, we're on the second option here. And notice, once again, it's created a group, but it's created a group that kind of cuts things in half. You know, to be honest with you, the shape modes, those are really the useful ones. The Pathfinder options, they're useful, but they're more particular. It's a more particular instance when they would be used. Because most of the time, I just want to work really fast. Sometimes it is useful to kind of create these kinds of weird shapes, depending on what you're drawing. But the Pathfinder will sort of leave everything there. That's whatever you can see, it will sort of keep, and whatever you can't see, it will sort of delete, at least in some cases. Like you'll notice that the green circle up above here, underneath where I drew this black line, it deleted that, right? I really don't end up using the Pathfinder, these options, very often. So I do want to complete this so you guys can see what it looks like. So Sorry, I'm getting a little rushed, but I will.
Another artboard I can use it?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Please, please. Yeah, multiple artboards. That's fine. Maybe a thicker stroke on this one. Whatever. And then, I don't know. Let's just flip these. Again, always needing to expand. Object expands. And then from here, what are we on? We're on the third option. You'll notice that there are, let's see, what are there? 6 options underneath here on the Pathfinder panel. Which one is it? There's one that's like really similar to another one. So much so that we couldn't figure out what the difference was. None of us could that really know Illustrator. I think it was these two right here. So we ended up like skipping one. You'll notice that there's only 5 objects, but there's 6 options. So these two right here, I think they do exactly the same thing. So if I draw a rectangle, and then what is it, like a circle behind the rectangle? I'm gonna come around and help you guys out. And I select that last option. There's a nice cutout. So that was, before I come around and help you guys out, that was lab assignment 1B. On your own, at home, or during open lab, you need to complete 1C and 1D. I'm not looking for perfect artistry here, but there is really, really fast ways of drawing these using the Pathfinder. What we did today was really just kind of practice and sort of experimentation. When you turn it in, I'm really just going to take a real quick look at it. Did you do it? Yes. Check. With these two, I mean, screw around, like do different things, try different things. If I see that you're having some issues, I might come and help you in class next week, or well, when I can find some time. But come in the lab. You know, I'm here during open lab hours. I will help you guys out one-on-one. It's kind of hard for me to do that with Professor Z's class. One of the ways that she gets through her classes is actually I'm here to help her, but there's no me for me. So I can't teach and walk around and help you guys individually. So I'm going to go ahead and pause the recording now. It's a little bit long.